So, Lori, you're an employee performance advisor for Dernavich.com.
I am.
What exactly does an employee performance advisor do?
Good question. I essentially go into companies and I resolve their people issues. So it can be an example of you have a manager who doesn't quite know how to manage people very well. So the company will call me in to fix them. Or kind of connected to this segment, I'll have a company call up and say that they've had 3 CFOs in 5 years. What are we doing wrong?
Okay.
So I'll go in and I'll analyze it, diagnose it, and more often than not, I will actually train or teach executives how to interview. If you think about it, you grew up in finance, you grew up in marketing, why would these people really know how to do a fantastic interview? So I go in and I show them how to do that.
We were talking earlier about how to get the interview. What happens when you get there? Because you're actually saying in some ways you have to take charge a little bit of the interview. Tell me about that.
I do, I mentioned earlier on that, I'll give a good example of this. We want to talk about funny. I don't know if it's funny, but when I go and do workshops for companies and show executives how to interview, one of the first things I do when I start out the workshop is just say to every person around the table, write down on a card your favorite or the best interviewing question you think you can ask. And then they write it down and they hand it forward. Go through the workshop. At the end of the workshop, we pull those cards out, and what I'll do is that I'll start reading them, and I'll say, let's see if it's good, or we can try to make it better. So I start reading, and I start going around the room, and I would tell you at least 75% of the cards had the same question on them.
Really?
And it's usually tell me your top 3 strengths. And it's interesting because what will happen is that you'll talk to a candidate, and candidate will say, I spent 8 hours at a company meeting with everybody in the room or everyone in the company, and it was a long day. And yet, if you think about what I just talked to you about, the thing is that in those 8 hours, you're probably having executives asking all the same questions.
Right, so you feel as a candidate, you spent an entire day of interviews and you feel like they didn't really get to know much about you anyway, even after all of that.
Well, and it's because, for the most part, people don't really know how to interview well. So, as you were mentioning before, what you want to do is gently take the lead. So you don't want to be overbearing, but what you want to make sure is that everything that was in that job description and you think that you have an expertise in, you want to make sure that you hit each point and give them your experience in it before that person walks out of the room.